Good evening. This is Colleen Law-Tefft from Sherburne Public Library, and I have with me again tonight Mike Tefft, who's our local author, and Brian McDowell, who is a publisher with Log Cabin Books. Tonight we're going to be talking about the publishing process. This is the sixth and final in our series of book talk that we've been talking about the writing process and editing and publishing, everything you can pretty much want to know about when you're writing a novel or a book or publishing something. So, Brian, I'm going to let you start it off tonight, talking about the publishing process.
Yeah, Colleen, and I think we'll probably be summarizing some of the points we made in the other sessions.
Yes.
But what we'll try to do is give you a really simplified version of a schedule for publishing a book, or a timetable or a sequence or a process or whatever. Keeping in mind that Mike and I have been especially careful not to discourage people from writing and trying to publish because of the process. It all starts with, as Mike put it so well, write the book you want to read. I would add to that, write the book that you know. If you have a specific part of knowledge or specific interest and you know something really well, maybe it's part of your career, maybe it's a avocation or a hobby, and you can write intelligently about it, that's the first step. Pick something that's experiential to you or something that you know really well. And once you do that, that gives you the confidence to really start the process of thinking of publishing your work. As far as the writing process, you may want to make the decision whether you're going to write your book as it is incomplete before you look for someone to market it and publish it or sell it for you, if you're going to do it that way. You may decide that you'll want to just create an outline and maybe write a chapter or two, thinking that you'll want to work closely with a publisher on the rest of the writing. Chances are good you're going to pick the former, not the latter. You're going to want to write first and then try to shop it around, because then it'll be much more yours. And at that point, I'll pause and ask Mike to interject with his Reluctant series, how he came to write the first book. And Mike, what was in your head as far as how much you wanted to write before you actually shared it with the world, shared it with anybody?
I pretty much wrote the whole thing and went through it at least one more time, at least two more times before I actually showed it to anybody. Because for one thing, I may be an okay speller. I am a horrible typist. So there were, it crosses that line between typos and spelling errors. But so anyways, I basically edited it till it was, till I thought it was pretty close to ready before I let anybody see it.
Mm-hmm. And most writers will do it that way. They'll often find out when they're working with a publisher, with an acquisitions editor or a development editor, that they didn't write it as well as they thought they had, which doesn't mean they're not as good a writer as they thought they were. But those editors will help them focus characters, focus dialogue, focus and usually pare down description. So those are all steps that happen after you've written the manuscript. So let's pretend you, as a first-time author, not speaking to Mike, but speaking to our audience, want to write something. Could be poetry, could be a work of fiction, a novel, or a work of nonfiction, something historical or how-to or whatever. Put it down on paper first, or on the keyboard, or on the screen. Once you've done that, think about who the audience might be for it. And I say that because I don't want you to spend a lot of time thinking of your audience while you're writing, because it'll change what you write if you're trying to please a certain audience. But if your finished product, if you believe from the start that it would appeal to a certain audience, I try to identify that audience as closely as you can. Who are they? Where do they live? What are their interests? What part of the market are they? And then when you try to interest a publisher in your book, and you should always try first before you try to self-publish, because self-publishing can be a lot less lucrative in most cases, and a lot, I wouldn't say more difficult, less difficult, but it might be less fulfilling for you if you're dead set on having a publisher. Once you've got your package together and you know what your market is, try to write a pitch letter that will sell your idea to the publisher. There are lots of places online. If you Google book pitch letters, you will learn how to write a pitch letter. It's like Googling a resume site if you want to write a perfect resume. A pitch letter is where you tell the potential publisher what your book is about, who you think it will appeal to, where the market is, not only who they are, but where they are. And if it's hyper-local, like Central New York or Southern Tier, say that. And you want to give them a little taste of your writing. Do not ever send your full manuscript or a thumb drive with your full manuscript to the publisher. It will not be read. It will be put in the circular file right away. That's a huge mistake a lot of people still make, even though they've been warned for decades not to do that. What you might want to do is put a few excerpts along with your cover letter so they get a sense of your tone, of your writing style, and then make sure they know that there's more if they want to read more. But they do not have time to read full manuscripts, and it will be a definite no if you do that. Mike, I don't know how far you got into that process yourself, but as far as a pitch letter, how did you handle that?
I actually, I decided to self-publish and just bypass the whole publisher realm.
I will say that, and we mentioned this earlier, Mike approached me and I was going to publish his second book for him, and I was not able to because of other responsibilities with other books, but it was easy for him, having written the first book, to give me the idea of the second book, and he made a verbal pitch. You cannot count on that. You have to make sure that you're set up to actually hand them something written. Do not take the attitude as a recent author did when he sent me his full manuscript and asked me to get back to him with the publishing schedule. Do not assume that the publisher owes you your book, or that it's definitely going to be published, because I didn't. His attitude turned me off from the start. Come to me and ask me if I'd like to publish your book. Don't come to me and say, here's my book, let's set up a schedule for publishing it. Because if I'm going to incur all the costs of printing and layout and design and editing and all that, I have to know that there's a return. And in this book in particular, I didn't have a strong sense of there being a market. He couldn't give it to me. So I'm sending it back to him and wishing him well. So if you decide to go with a publisher, that's what you should do. You should pitch to large and small publishers. Start out big, why not? And at some point, you may want to contact an agent. Now, I personally would not recommend that for first-time authors in this area. An agent is someone who will help you find a publisher, may hook you up with an editor to help you work on your manuscript, may reject you outright and say, I'm not going to work with you. But in a lot of cases, it's an added expense that you don't need. If you know you're going to publish your book, either self-published or through a publisher anyway, don't spend a lot of time with an agent. You can certainly hire a professional editor to help you edit the book. And then if you haven't had success with publishers, you can self-publish. If your book is something that has national or international appeal, and it's an obvious book that's going to sell well, you won't have this issue, and an agent will probably snatch it up and sign a contract with you and get you on your way, because they have an in with the publishing houses, and they can get you in there and help you get a contract. But if you're writing something local or something first time or something personal, poetry is a great example. Poetry books are notoriously very hard to sell. And a lot of people have poems and they think they make a great book, and they might, but they might be something that you want to self-publish. So an agent is not something I'd recommend, depending on what your market is. If you have a national market, then it's a good idea. Mike, any thoughts about agents?
No, I think that kind of hits the nail on the head. I mean, they can be useful in opening doors that might be closed to you just pitching directly to particularly the bigger publishers.
Right, right.
But you pay for that, basically a percentage of your sales, percentage of the money that you're supposed to get goes to them and not you. So,
right. And if you're not guaranteed a first run of 10 or 20,000 books, your share is going to be absorbed by the agent, and you won't see much of any profit. So start with writing your book and then try to sell it to a publisher. If you're not able to sell it to a national or a big publisher, come to somewhere like Log Cabin Books and pitch the idea. And I'll be honest with you, I'll tell you, it's not something, as I told this gentleman who insisted that I publish his book, it's not something in our market. It would be a departure from what I do for me to publish this book. So you have to show me what the audience is, and he wasn't able to do that, or he was unwilling to do that. But if you can find a local publisher, great. Make sure they don't take a huge percentage like a large publisher would. You should try to work with them to make sure that your percentage as author is upward of 15%, which is kind of the limit for first-time national authors. They usually make about 12%. I give more than that because I'm working with local authors, and I'm as happy to have them as they are to have me. But make sure you don't give away the whole house just on your first contact with the publisher. There are lots of places online, and I don't know, Mike, if you wanted to mention some of the ones you were thinking of that will take you through the process of what the contract should include. And I think we included some of that last time, but keep it real simple. They'll try to confuse you with a lot of legalese. It's not necessary. Just ask exactly what your percentage is going to be, who's going to own the copyright, as we talked about last time, and those kinds of things. If they accept your work, then you're going to be working with an editor, and the process starts all over again, because that editor is going to sit down with you and say, you have 40,000 words, let's make it 27,000. And you can either do that with them or without them, because once you sign the contract, you've actually given the publisher a lot of control over the content of the book. And they have rights of refusal if you refuse to work with them on your book. So you have to be kind of without ego. You have to be willing to compromise. And that's a good reason for some people to self-publish, if you don't want your original book to become partly someone else's book. Jump in here anywhere, Mike.
Oh, I mean, I would agree with that. For me, the decision to self-publish, I don't know, it just kind of, it appealed to me. Like I'd also just happened to come across the book about the whole self-publishing process. And so I read that and it's like, well, I can do that. So, so that's what led me down that road. And there are a lot of monetarily successful writers that are self-published or like they like to be called independent authors. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of resources to find out more about that too. So, I mean, for me, it was a decision, well, maybe it was a decision of cowardice that I didn't want to send my book out and be rejected by publishers. So I
don't think that was
what I thought was an easier route.
I don't think it was cowardice. I will say, yeah, you mentioned there are lots of famous titles that started out as self-published stories. One is a story called The Christmas Box, which actually sold millions and millions of copies, but started out as a self-published work. So there are lots of opportunities.
Andy Weir's The Martian.
I'm sorry?
Andy Weir's The Martian.
The Martian, good example. Yeah, and that did pretty well.
Yeah, it did okay.
It did okay. the hardest thing for authors to reconcile, and I've never really worked with a happy author, and that's not a dig against them. It's just that the process, first of all, they're giving up control of the process, but the process takes longer than they would expect it to take. So I always tell an author, as I'm starting to work with them, that they should assume, and this is if a manuscript is rough and I'm going to have to work with them page by page, which I'll happily do if I think it's going to sell. But the process in that case will take up to 18 months, and probably at least 18 months. Authors don't like to hear that because that's a long time, but that's the reality. You know, there are glitches in the process of printing that slow that down, and production, that kind of thing. But the main thing is it just takes time to get the book where you want it to be so that it is something that you'd both be proud to publish. The good news is that most authors have already waited several years to see their work published, so they're invested in it and they're in it for the long run. And you have to be in it for the long run. Two things: don't write to get rich, and don't expect your writing to be published or printed quickly. If you can kind of adhere to those two things, then I think you're in good shape. That's the process. You write, you try to pitch it to someone, you either have it acquired by someone who's going to work with you, or you self-publish. I'm going to turn over to Mike to talk a little bit more about the self-publishing process. But every step of the way, you have to be keenly aware of, you know, I'm also a lousy typist, Mike. You have to make sure that the typos are gone. You need to read it and read it and read it again. You should actually, as the author, have a little subcommittee of several friends or professional editors, or a combination of both, who are going to read your text as you get it ready with the publisher. Not just for content, but also because they'll catch things that you and the publisher missed. So that's really important. You have to scour it and sanitize it, maybe much more than before. How does that jive, Mike, with the process that you used on your first book, The Reluctant Captain?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty close. I revised it a couple times, got it ready, sent it out to some friends to look at, got some initial feedback, tried to incorporate anything from that in there, did a whole couple more rounds of editing, hired an editor to edit the book, for punctuation, typos. I think I pretty much went through it again after that was done. And then the self-publishing fun began. And I could talk a little bit about that. I would say that probably the first thing you need to do is decide how you want to distribute your book. Do you want to go exclusive, or do you want to go wide? Exclusive is easy. I mean, to be honest, uploading, putting your ebook up into Amazon is really pretty easy. And, you can do it without, a lot of fuss. And, maybe that's where you want to go. Maybe you want to put it up in Amazon, and maybe you want to have a couple, print-on-demand copies available, for family and friends. And that's all you really care about. Mm-hmm. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to, potentially sell to more markets, you want to look at some of the, you may want to look at wide. And so that gives you more options, but it makes the process a little more complicated. So assuming you've done everything that Brian said up to this point, where you've got your finished manuscript and you're ready to go, the first thing you probably want to do is format it for the ebook and or print that you're going to use. There are some tools to do that. There is a free online tool. I think it's Draft to Digital. That's draft2digital.com. They have a fairly simple doesn't give you a lot of choices, but it'll format your book for you. It'll take your Word file, and it will, you could apply their set styles, and it will format your book for you, or at least do the major grunt work of that. I personally use a piece of software that's only for the Mac called Vellum. It is the best money I've spent on a piece of software for writing ever, because with Vellum, you can do that, and then with one click of the button, you can print your hardcover or your print version and every single ebook format that you need for just about any place you want to upload it. And it's one click of a button. It couldn't be easier.
Perfect. And one thing, Mike, that we talked about last time was something that you have much more control over, and usually you're much happier about if you self-publish, and that is artwork and illustrations.
Yes.
If you have a book that has illustrations, anything short of photographs, some artistic work, a children's book or something like that, if you submit to a publisher in your pitch with your own artwork, it will be rejected, no matter how good the artwork is. You might want to include one character sketch or one page illustration, and just mention that you are very fond of your illustrator friend or artist and you'd like to use them, but understand that generally the publisher will hire someone to do the art for your book, and there's a 99% chance it's not going to be the artist that you wish. Similarly, if you have a cover design in mind, or something that you want to use for the cover, probably not going to work either, because as nice as it might be, they probably know more about what will appeal and what the cover needs to look like based on what other books look like right now. One thing that can be helpful is, after you've been signed with a publisher, is to send them, whether they solicit it or not, some examples of covers that you like, that you could see being similar to what you'd like them to do. It puts it in their head, even if they say, "We got this, your contribution is not really necessary." They are going to eventually have to have you sign off on what the cover looks like in the back page, the back cover as well. But do not force your illustrators or artists on them. If that's important to you, that your friend who's an artist gets to illustrate your book, self-publish. That's the only way to ensure that that's going to work. Or come to a small publisher like me, and if I like it, I'll let it go too, because then I can pay them along with the contract as opposed to a separate fee process. So artwork is a main thing. That also makes it more difficult to create the ebook version, whether you're working with a publisher or not. If you have a book that does not have artwork in it, you're golden, because there's not page independence. In other words, you don't have to have a certain illustration lying on a page just like it's laid out. You have no illustrations. The pages just flow like they flow, and it's a very easy process. If you have illustrations, it's much more, it's more time consuming and more expensive to actually create ebooks. So that's something to think about as well. Yeah, that's basically the process. Now, obviously, if you're going to use a blog or a podcast, especially a blog, to publish your work, and we talked about WordPress as being a good free choice for that. Obviously, you want to make sure that it is sanitized as best as possible. Blogs used to mean that only the person who authored the work reviewed it, and a lot of blog posts went up with a lot of mistakes, and it was understood that they would because nobody else had looked at it. If you're going to write a blog, have it edited by someone else just to catch the mistakes that you left there. But that process is just copy and paste. That's very easy. So blog work, you're done. Chances are, if you're blogging, you're not planning or hoping to make money from it. You can buy into WordPress, the non-free version, and actually monetize your blog so that people are reading your work much like they would be reading an ebook. But most people are not going to do that. But if you do that, you've got a two-step process. Just make sure you have a good editor. You have to remember that your ego is the thing that will hold you back in this process. If you're going to work with a publisher, you have to be somewhat selfless. You can't take criticism to heart, especially when it's just constructive literary criticism. They have people there who are better writers than you are, and you have to make your peace with that. They're not better, however, at writing your book. So you want to stand up for yourself when, as Mike said, there are clear moments that make it the book that you want to write and that you want to read. And they may not have your expertise if you're writing a book about equine or equestrian world, or you know, a physical science or computer science, or whatever your specialization is, music. They may not have anybody who knows that world as well as you do. And that's your point, is you want to tell about the world that you know well. But the publishing process takes patience. You have to be patient. I'm not just saying that because I'm a publisher who works with authors who are always unhappy, because authors are meant to be unhappy. They're not, it's not going exactly the way they want it to, and they don't understand how much work is involved. That's okay, I can deal with that. In the end, they're happy with the product and it's all good. But you have to be patient. I think Mike would agree with that.
Yeah. I will say, I know for me that the thing that's tripped me up the most is the cover design. Not so much, I have the cover, I have it designed, but every single place you try to do it has a different rules for how much space there has to be and how big it has to be and what resolution and what format. And that's the piece that drives me up the wall, especially doing paperback and hardcover. That I think I went through 7 or 8 iterations trying to get the hardcover jacket right on my last book.
I'm glad you said that, Mike, because that's a point at which, if you have the cover design in your head, you should use the services of a graphic artist who knows all the terminology and knows all that resolution stuff, and it will be quick work for them. You don't have to be invested to that degree. You can certainly have someone who is in that world take care of that technical stuff. Yes. Much like the publisher works with the printer, and you don't have to learn the world of print and all the you know, 4-color process and all that jargon. It's the same with the illustrator and the artist. Have them take care of that. Have them execute your design. I mean, they can certainly make suggestions, but have them be the liaison with the people who are going to produce it either in print or ebook. So you don't have to fool around with that. Let an expert handle that.
That was a lesson learned this last time.
There's always a lesson. Go ahead. No,
I thought I'd give some, like, we just really skimmed over this. So if people are really interested, I've got a couple of links or places where people can go for extra information. A really excellent website is called The Creative Pen, and that's pen with 2 N's.com. It's run by Joanna Penn. She does nonfiction about writing, and also she's also a fiction writer as well. She has if you sign up for her newsletter, you get a PDF called the Author 2.0 Blueprint, which kind of is a real high level over, you know, what it is to be a writer or an author, and, you know, kind of what it takes to get published. It is with more of an independent publishing bent. I will say that. She also offers a free ebook called Successful Self-Publishing, and it's available on, you know, all the ebook sites. That will give you a much clearer view of the self-publishing process, so you can see if that is something you really want to do.
That is usually number 1 when you search for self-publishing. That's usually number 1 in the search list, because it is very popular. Successful self-publishing. We'll put all these at the end, I think, Colleen, right?
Yeah, we'll have them.
So you don't have to write it down now. But at the start of the process, I'm a big fan of Stephen King's On Writing. I think that's a really good text for or I should say resource for people who want to know about the writing process. But when you're in process, what else do you have, Mike?
That was kind of it for the sort of the self-publishing stuff. I thought that would be, that would be a good next place to go after, listening to us talk about it, because there is a lot of questions, you're going to have a lot of questions. I mean, I work with computers in my day job, so most of the nuts and bolts of the actual publishing stuff wasn't too bad, but it's just getting to that point.
Sure. Yeah, and we're always available. I'm at logcabinbooks.com. We can all be reached for more information. We're happy to talk about this. Eventually, when the world returns, we may do something at the library as we've done in the past. I always like to encourage, if and when the world returns. I always like to encourage authors that way, and Mike's a great example of a self-published author who just put his mind to it and spent a lot of time and energy, which I think is a labor of love for him, although there certainly are times when it's a struggle.
Yeah.
But
Colleen knows.
But in the end, it's something that should serve your soul and be a passion for you. And if it is, then take it wherever it takes you.
Absolutely. Well, great. This has been a great series, guys. I really appreciate your talking and giving all your advice and information over the last 6 weeks, I guess it is, because this is our 6th one. Any last words before we wrap it up?
Mike, make sure you remind them of your 2nd novel and what the ETA is for that.
Our 3rd one.
Okay.
A 3rd one, I'm sorry. Your 3rd novel. Yeah. Well, you haven't mentioned the 2nd one today.
Yeah. All right. Well, I actually have 2 books out, The Reluctant Captain, and the newest one is Reluctant Agent. That was published last July. It's coming up on its 1-year birthday here in another few weeks.
2 months.
It's available at the library. It's once the library opens back up again, you could request it from curbside pickup, or if you really want it, you can go to the Fort County Library and get the ebook versions. They're available. If you really want a physical copy, you can go to Amazon and order them there, or you can also get the ebook from Amazon, Apple, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo.
You don't have your own storefront set up yet. You don't have your own store.
I don't have my own storefront. I do have a link that will take you to all of the different ebook places. So I've got one single link you can go to that will take you to all the ebook versions.
And Colleen and I will work on a drive-by parade so you can stand on your porch in July and celebrate your 1-year anniversary. We'll try to get every car in Sherburne to be involved in that.
There we go. That's the way we celebrate now.
And if you want to find out what's going, I blog extremely infrequently at reluctantauthor.com. But when I get closer to publishing the 3rd book, you'll definitely hear stuff there. So if you're interested, check it out. You can sign up for my mailing list. I have very few people on my mailing list. I also don't mail very often. So.
Yeah, and I have 25 titles on logcabinbooks.com if you want to check us out. We sell primarily through our website. A few are on Amazon, but I had a bad experience with them stealing some property, so I don't frequent them that often. But I also owe Colleen, I keep telling her this, significant contribution of my title, so I'll be doing that through Fort County very soon, so you have especially our historical titles. But this has been a joy. I hope a lot of you will join us in the publishing realm soon, and like Mike said, write the book you want to read.
Absolutely. Thanks again for doing this, guys. I really appreciate it. I think it's been some good information for all of our watchers, hopefully. And again, if anyone needs any information about either of these guys, just come to the library, contact me. I can get you in touch with anything relating to them. So that's not a problem at all. So
Thank you, Colleen. I have to say, I have to interject here. You do a wonderful job there, and it's a great local library. Anybody who goes to your website or your Facebook page can see all the things you're involved in, and it's a real asset to the community that I hope will be around for many, many thousands of years.
Yes, it's been over 100 so far, so we're hoping to continue another 100 at least. So
Cool.
all right, well, thanks again, and we will see you all soon, and come visit us at the library when we open, hopefully soon.
Thank you both.
Take
Thank you.
care.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.